Paltrocast.
Reverend Vince Anderson, Nick Canfield, pleasure to be speaking with you both. The first question is, Vince, do I call you Rev Anderson? How do you like to be called?
You can call me anything you like, but most people call me Rev.
Now, I first found out about you, Rev, through an Arena Rock recording company compilation 20-ish years ago. So it's great to see you're finally getting your due with a documentary. Now, how long did it take for you to go, yes, Nick, you can film me, I'm okay with the documentary?
Nick would love to answer that question, but it did take a while. I think for at least 6 months.
Wow.
Before I said yes, finally. Nick?
Yeah, Nick, I'm curious to hear this. How long was it from having the idea or the passion to do this to getting Vince to sign off to actually, that kind of a process?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been going to see the show myself for probably 6 years or so, and I was a fan. And then at a certain point, I was like, I don't know why, it just came to me one day. I was like, wow, we have to showcase Vince, for the wider world, and I want to see behind the curtain. And so I knew Paula, the saxophone player, through a friend of mine, and so she introduced us, and a film I had worked on was in theaters, and Vince saw it, but it still took, I would say several months until, we sat down and he kind of finally agreed.
And when you look at this film in IMDb, it says 2021, and obviously it's not a 2021 film. How many years was it in the making?
It was about 5 years. We filmed for a little over 4 years and then edited it for another year and a bit. And then I finished the film. I edited it with my editor in Austin, and I flew back with all the hard drives on the day before COVID lockdown. So we had to wait, kind of sit on our hands for a year or so as well after all that. So that was the sort of pulling out the hair time, as you can imagine.
Right. Now, the follow-up to that is, how did you know that the film was done?
Well, it's hard to know when you're just following Vince along and just trying to see what happens in this observational way where I'm not trying to, tell the story. I just want to let the story reveal itself.
Yeah.
But I would say that, when we were kind of getting close to, thought we had a lot of good stuff, and we were getting ready to start editing, when Vince went on with the Vote Common Good, back out with Vote Common Good to the El Paso Walmart shooting site to bear witness to that and show that event and be there with other progressive pastors. And that's when I felt like I think we have the end of the film here.
Now, Vince, is there anything in watching back the film, because anytime you're the subject of a documentary, you're going to have to watch it hundreds of times, whether or not you want to. Is there anything that you feel doesn't represent who you are, or anything that you wish you could clarify? Or did just Nick do the best job ever and end of story?
Yeah, there's not really anything that I take offense to or doesn't seem to be a part of my story. I mean, there's stuff that's embarrassing, but that's not Nick's fault. Like a persistent nose hair during one interview. I'm like, oh, what? But other than that, like everything's just fine, and more so than that, more than just fine. Like, not only did he capture, because I have a little bit of an issue with being recorded. Not so much that I think it's going to capture my spirit or anything like that, but I do believe that I live in the live world.
Yeah.
Like, as far as my art goes, I'm very much a live performance. That's where I thrive. And so to be anything recorded has never really captured what I feel is the live experience or my essence as a performer and person and spiritual being, But the film did. And not only did it do it kind of content-wise, but also aesthetically. Like, I watched the film and think, oh, that's kind of how I see the world. When there's landscape, I imagine my eye is kind of following the city, the landscape. So I guess that's to say I'm a fan of the film.
I'm glad to hear that, because to give you a random example, do you remember the movie Dig that was about the Dandy Warhols and the Brian Jonestown Massacre?
Oh, yes, I remember it well.
I really enjoyed the film, but if you talk to anyone from either band, they hate it and it's embarrassing to them.
Yeah.
So that sounds like the exact opposite of your experience with working with Nick.
No, completely. It wasn't. He really did do the observational film thing, where he was just there, and wasn't making any judgments or trying to incite anything. There weren't any situations where he like, let's put you in this weird situation and see what you do. None of that kind of trickery. So
Yeah.
after a while, after I knew he wasn't going to do crap like that, I felt really comfortable and I felt like I could be myself.
So, Nick, you mentioned in terms of timing that you got all the footage and you got back home right before a lockdown happened. But were you able to work on another project at the same time as working on this one? Sometimes when you speak with filmmakers, they're really one project at a time kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just the filming took so long. I was like working on other people's films as a cinematographer. I mean, I was right the week after Vince, and I sat down and he agreed, and this is, I guess, 2015. And we started, and then the first scene I filmed was him in his garden, actually. That's in the film. So it's interesting. The very first thing I shot made it. But the next week, I got a call from that Making a Murderer, that Netflix show, and I worked on that for like 2.5 years while I was doing the whole first half of this film.
It's intriguing that you worked on something so dark and something so joyous at the same time.
Yeah, it was really nice for me to be at the shows. I would come back from Wisconsin and in places where murders took place and things like that, and people are incarcerated and so forth, and I would have Vince's really uplifting show to always kind of make me feel better. So there were a lot of times when his show kind of gave me the strength to kind of keep going with this long process.
Now, Vince, you mentioned something very interesting to me, at least, because interesting is a relative word here, but that sometimes live shows, the energy is not captured effectively. And then furthermore, sometimes the studio album does not capture any of the live energy, etc. Do you have any studio recordings that you are especially proud of?
Well, actually, I do have 4 records, and I wrote them in a sense, but none of them I don't think really capture the live thing. We went for different things, and with levels of success, experiment. But the soundtrack record that is coming out on March 1st for all streaming platforms is a combination of both live performance and studio. We were kind of inspired by, the Last Wall and how they made that soundtrack, like going into the soundstage to get that. I'm really proud of the record. I think being behind the camera for 5 years with Nick put me at ease at the studio now as well. I'm not as afraid of recorded media as I was.
Sure. Well, Nick, when you were making this documentary, did you know that there was also going to be a soundtrack or a live album all along?
I mean, pretty much, yeah. I mean, I knew that we're recording all of this amazing music, and that Vince has never really released it, and because it wasn't recorded and try to capture it, I think, in the way that would try to showcase what it is. And it's not easy to make a live album that sounds good,
Yeah.
and they really did a great job, and also the other part about it is that Vince has a lot of songs that are like 7, 8, 12 minutes long. So to make those decisions about what's going to make the cut and how thing, and they did do a studio version of Please Don't Give Up with Resistance Revival chorus. There's a studio track on there. So because otherwise that song would be 15 minutes long. And it's great. And so I think it's really it's nice that people get to have the album as well as the film, because then they can just listen to Vince wherever they are going.
And the follow-up to that, before I ask you both the same closing question here, is, Nick, is there a lot of good cutting room footage so that eventually we might see a B-roll or a director's cut, or if there were a Blu-ray, we would get another documentary about the documentary?
Absolutely, yeah. We would love the idea of doing a Blu-ray, and that's definitely there's some discussions about that, and so hopefully there are a few deleted scenes already. Or Vince at the Wild Goose Festival where he steals a golf cart and drives around giving people rides, and very Vince's pre-show ritual and other kind of cool things. Vince's holiday Christmas song, and that's very different than any other Christmas song you've ever heard, and lots of stuff like that. Plenty of music as well. So we would love to kind of release that stuff, here and there. And there's a couple of deleted scenes that are on the film's Instagram page that you can see. But maybe we'll get to do a commentary. That would be great.
So this is kind of an outlier documentary for a musician where the person's still alive, the person's still in good health and capable of performing. There's good leftover footage, and everyone's optimistic about working together again.
I guess so. Yeah. We'll have to. Yeah, we'll have to. Not only that, Vince is recovered from his surgery he had, and he's back and better than ever. So I don't know if there's no dark tragedy at the end of this one, unfortunately.
Not like the Tribe Called Quest documentary where they all hated each other and denounced the director at the end of that. So the last question I have, Vince, what's next besides this great new documentary actually coming out?
What else? I mean, our shows are on Monday every week, and I look forward to the next show every Monday. And so I look forward to the exposure the film bringing, taking that little woman Brooklyn means so much to the community there. To kind of take that, however that room gets transmitted to the rest of the world. That's what's next for me. I mean, I'm excited to see how that happens and what conversations.
Makes sense to me. And Nick, same question, the closing words of you. What's next? Where should we be looking for you next? And or what's the social media to be following you and your projects?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow the film at the Reverend Film on Instagram. You can follow me at Nick Canfield. And we're like excited to get the film out there, and it's going to be on Criterion Channel, it's going to be on Amazon, it's going to be on this other cool streaming service called Night Flight Plus. If people remember that show from the 80s, they have a streaming service, and the album, and that's going to be exciting. And then we'll who knows, maybe the band will do a bit of touring and that kind of stuff. And I'm working on some new films. I'm doing a few shorts, and couple of them are music docs, so there'll be some other interesting. So one of them is about an iconic 80s song. Everybody knows it. It's that song that goes do bow bow.
Oh yeah, which It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes,
and Ferris Bueller.
Exactly. Yes. Oh yeah, by Yellow. So I'm investigating the legacy of that song and its origins and the electronic guys behind it. So there'll be some other kind of other interesting things coming.
I'm psyched for that one as well. You have a great batting average with quality, Nick. Keep it up. Vince, thank you for making the world a more positive and accepting place. Congrats on the doc, and really looking forward to what's to come from both of you in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Paltrocast.